In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at sunskyMysteries.com.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SHTF.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Today is March 17th, 2013. Welcome to a brand new episode of Surrounded by Idiots. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want to see the show commercial-free, come on over and watch the live broadcast at sunskyMysteries.com. You'll have a very convenient chat box there as well, so that you can communicate with me and call me nasty names while I'm on the air trying to concentrate. You know what's really funny? Funny, actually. Every time I go on the air, one of two things happens. Either I forget what I was going to say, that's perfectly normal, or all of a sudden I get a frog in my throat and I have to clear my throat 100 times or so, which is perfectly normal, given my medical condition currently. So let's get on with the show, shall we? Pardon me while I clear my throat once more. You know, there's something that you, the audience, needs to know. That is this: the end is nigh. The end is both man-made and a natural cycle. You can call this doom and gloom if you like, or gloom and doom, if that is more to your liking. The man-made gloom started many, many years ago, during a generation far, far away. The gloom that has survived and is now in the forefront of world events is, in my opinion, the personification of evil in our times. Evil as in Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Idi Amin. Evil as in the SS, the Stasi. Evil as in the final solution. And as a bonus, there are those that are just going along with all of this. They don't really care. They are the sheeple. And then there are those, like myself, that are wide awake and frightened to death. We are frightened because the perfect storm of natural and man-made disasters are upon us. The man in the sackcloth at the Vatican says this, and I quote, "I want you, instead of taking pictures of me, I want to let you know that we are entering difficult times." There he is right there. The man in the sackcloth at the Vatican. He says, the Pope, this Pope, will have many difficulties and troubles, and we should pray. Praying is always a good idea, regardless of why you are praying. He says we need to prepare ourselves to suffer. A lot of suffering is coming to the Church, the Vatican, and the world. We approach the end of days. Instead of paying attention to me, take notice of the times that we are entering. That's what the man in the sackcloth at the Vatican said. Whether or not you're a Catholic, whether or not your inclinations lean that way or not, this guy says you should take seriously. Obviously, he is serious about it, and I don't think he is one of those placard-carrying nutcases, judging from what I have seen. Now, we know, those of us that are involved with this show, we know because of the people that we have had on the show, the people that we are planning even now to have on the show, that on this planet, there are cycles of life, cycles of death, and cycles of evil. And we have entered into one of those very few times when all three cycles converge at one time. Because the truth will not only set you free, but it is also kept from you. And when you find it, your life is on the line. There is so much that you need to hear, and so much that I have to tell you. But I can't right now. But remember this. We are all in this together. Everything that is going on, this is all of our own doing because of our inactivity, because we did not stand up and say something when we needed to or when we were supposed to. And for that, we shall all burn for this. Each and every one of us, we will all burn together. Because as I say on one of our websites, USSAMichigan.com, we are the Michigan League of Fed Up Citizens. We came alive in 2006. That is when we woke up. And we are so tired. And in the end, the only two dooms that are real are the cycles. The cycles of evil and the cycle of the end. And as it turns out, it appears that we've got 1 month, that's it, 1 month to make some decisions. And as always, as I look out over the vista of this country and the world and look and read what people are saying and the so-called leaders are doing, I have become quite aware that we are in fact surrounded by idiots.
We are poor little lambs who have lost our way. Ba, ba,
Those who would trade our freedom for the soup kitchen of the welfare state have told us they have a utopian solution.
Some in Congress are trying to undo these automatic spending cuts. My message to them is simple. No.
You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You just cross over into the twilight zone.
So these cuts are not smart, they are not fair, they will hurt our economy, not well thought through.
And welcome back to the show. I hope you like our opening credits. The staff worked long and hard on getting that together, and they are always improving it. There's always something a little new in there. Now, you know what? Let's get right on to the show notes. There is a website that I have been exploring, and it seems to be pretty good with their writing and information about a lot of subjects, a lot of different subjects. It's called disinfo.com, and it's kind of hard to tell what direction they come in, whether they come from the right or the left or the middle. It seems to be they're a little bit more center of the road politically and spiritually. A lot of the articles are pretty good. Some aren't quite as good as you would expect, but it's not too bad. Not a bad website at all. Now, there's a bunch of articles that I have for you guys. There is an article here at Canada Free Press. It's by Doug Hagman. of the Hagman and Hagman show. And it's called Surviving the Coming Collapse. And let's see here. He wrote an article recently called Racing for the Exits. And he's received, according to him, 1,000 emails with some questions from people, which basically go like this. How do you think it will play out? What will it look like, the economic collapse that you've been writing about? So apparently this article is takes that on, and he talks about it in this article. And for those of you that know Doug Hagman and the show that he does, the Hagman and Hagman Report, he says he is just an investigator and a writer who has spent 25 years developing contacts all over the place in order to bring you his point of view. He says he's an average guy with a family and is just trying to make ends meet and make sense of it all. And his contacts are very knowledgeable. That's why I don't mind quoting his articles, because he presents some very good ones. Now, he talks here about what's called the normalcy bias, and it says this: as I've previously written, the majority of people believe that an economic collapse cannot or will not happen in America. Frankly, that's exactly what I believed for the majority of my adult life until I stopped listening to the people, the very architects of our upcoming and life-changing pain and suffering that is about to descend upon the working class in whatever country you reside. And I believe that is actually is very, very true. Now, here's the thing. This is why this is going to be this comeuppance, if you will, this economic comeuppance is going to be so very, very painful. What you have to do is, when you have a stock market correction, or like in our last, the thing that started this current depression, the housing market bubble popped, what you have to do is, for the long-term health of the country and for the economy, you have to, absolutely have to, let it play itself out. You have to let the companies, whether it be banks or corporations, you have to let them fail on their own. That is the only way that we can have a healthy economy. And instead, what has been done is that it has been determined that these companies and banks are too big to fail. And as such, they were given assistance so they didn't fail. So the same old problems are still in place. Nothing has been fixed. The only thing we're doing is kicking the can down the road. The longer you kick the can down the road, the harder it's going to fall when it finally goes over the cliff. Hagman continues, it's easy to be dismissive of such warnings as everything appears normal on the surface. In most areas, especially America, life continues to be relatively good as people continue to drive shiny new vehicles to their jobs, buy big-ticket items, and take nice vacations. Well, at least some people. But those with discernment feel different. We know that something is terribly wrong. While others call us crazy, we've broken free from the spells of the talking heads who insist that we are in a recovery. They are either the complicit facilitators of this illusion or of normalcy, or the victims of normalcy bias. And that, even though it's not a dictionary classic definition of the word normalcy bias, or the phrase normalcy bias, it is actually extremely accurate. That is basically what a normalcy bias is. It's a phantom. It is a psychological phantom that people do to themselves. The normalcy bias, everybody thinks everything's fine. You know, it's it might be a little bit slow at work or something like that. You know, this stuff isn't on that. All this stuff is always on the shelves at the grocery store. You know, but everything's still okay. It's the normalcy bias, and it's a very easy trap for people to fall into, simply because everybody wants everything to be normal. Everybody wants things to be the way they were. But that's the way it is. It's the normalcy bias. Hageman goes on in this article, and he says, and I quote, "Based on my investigation, numerous interviews, and hours upon hours of extensive research, one thing appears to be certain. The collapse of the U.S. dollar is a mathematical certainty. It is merely a question of when. No one seems to be able to answer the timing aspect of such an event, although they all comfortably believe it will be within the next 18 to 24 months at the outside. Quietly, however, they have murmured that they don't think we have that much time." And I have to agree with that. It can happen at any time. Look what's happening in Cyprus right now. And I hadn't planned on covering this on the show, but it essentially has worked its way around in my talking points here. Look what's happening in Cyprus. The EU bailed out Cyprus, and the parliament there, the leaders in the country, were going to have a vote on a 10% penalty on all money in all banks. Once the population heard about that, they began a run on the banks, and now that vote has been put off for at least 24 hours, and there may even be a bank holiday over the entire European Union. That can spread. If what we did in the housing market, the mistakes that we made in the housing market, can flood worldwide the way it did, then what happens over there can also flood our country and cause us even more pain. Okay, now that I'm starting to get myself depressed. All right, here's our next article. 25 things that don't care if SHTF, and we all know what SHTF means. And let me see. I'm looking over what folks are saying in the chat room, and one of the comments is that that's something that I have also noticed. One of our viewers has made the comment that one of the biggest hindrances in being prepared is in the Christian community. And that is true. I don't have my notes in front of me right now in order to answer that, but it is true. It is part of the normalcy bias, actually, and other aspects of the Christian community. I'll see if I can whip up that subject for the next show. 25 things that don't care if SHTF, and we all know what that means. And here it is. This comes to us from activistpost.com. Activistpost.com. 25 things that don't care. 25 things that the SHTF doesn't care about. This is actually a tongue-in-cheek article, but it is very, very pointed. And the reason why I wanted to include this on the show is simply because disasters, things that happen, SHTF. When things happen, bad things, like 9/11, a tornado, a hurricane, a winter storm, a car accident, a train accident, a chemical explosion, a nuclear attack, a terrorist attack, an earthquake, sinkhole opening up and swallowing your bedroom along with you, and let me see, airplane crashes and things like that. Things like that happen unexpectedly. It's very, very hard to be prepared for the unexpected. And that is essentially what this points out to us. SHTF doesn't care about inclement weather, snow, hail, tornadoes, and hurricanes all just add to the party atmosphere for SHTF. SHTF doesn't care if you sprained your ankle, broke your leg, or are otherwise less than ambulatory. If you have to bug out without a vehicle, you have to bug out regardless of your injury status. Suck it up. SHTF doesn't care that you decided to start prepping after the trip to Disney World because that trip is expensive. SHTF doesn't care that you are in a boat middle of the ocean regardless of what you paid for that luxury cruise. Check out what happens on those cruise ships. Yeah, exactly. You got to be prepared. I mean, it goes along with the normalcy bias. All of this goes along with the normalcy bias. People want things to be normal. They don't expect bad things to happen. You know, I know so many people that say to me, they say, Bill, I know I really should prepare. I really got to get started on that one of these days. And I tell them this, and you can use this line too, because it is, I think, very good. Someday, if you wait until someday to start preparing, it's too late. You need to get that I should do that mindset out of your head and start doing it right now, if not sooner. SHTF doesn't care that you plan to get your vehicle repaired. You have to evacuate regardless of the leak from the oil pan, the condition of the brakes, and the funny noise from the transmission. SHTF doesn't care that the entire family is ill with the stomach flu. The entire family will just have to pause to throw up while bugging out. SHTF doesn't care that you need a new hiking boots and that you haven't had the time to go to the store or you can't afford to buy them. SHTF doesn't care that you plan to buy some bulk foods with your next paycheck because by then it will be too late. SHTF doesn't care that you always use electronic bankings. If the ATMs are down and you have no cash, you cannot buy anything. That is exactly true. That is why I have told you on previous shows you need to have cash on hand and you need to have bartering materials. Now, what are bartering materials? They are things like, and I'm going to name some off the top of my head that I know will be good bartering materials if the worst thing happens and, let's say, civilization takes the big crapper. And there aren't any banks, there aren't any cops, there aren't any stores, there's no just-in-time shipping at the local Walmart or anything else, and you have to begin bartering. You need barter items. Here are some of the excellent barter items that you need to have on hand. Liquor. Trust me, people will always want liquor. Tobacco products. Bulk tobacco. That will probably be worth its weight in gold. Speaking of that, gold coins or silver coins, silver ingots, what have you. Food can be used as a barter item because when the banks are down and it's for an extended period of time, and just look at what's going on in Europe, in Cyprus right now, that can be a very, very bad thing. Let's go back to the list. Let me check our chat. Yeah, okay, that's another one. Hold on 1 second. You guys listen to some rather pithy and poignant music while I go to pick something up. Hold on 1 second. That was pretty quick, wasn't it? I am back. One of our viewers, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, we have the chat going here on the show, and one of our viewers mention something that is very, very good. An excellent suggestion. And it's one of the things that I happen to have right here in my hand. Because I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. This is the remainder of one of our 50-pound bags of rice. Did you know 3/4 of the world eats rice for at least 2 meals a day? It's a lot of people. And rice, as it turns out, is extremely inexpensive. I get a 50-pound bag of rice for approximately $25 right now. Very, very cheap. A good source for rice, if you have one in your area, and most reasonably metropolitan areas do, would be an Asian market. We have an Asian market in Ann Arbor that I go to get my 50-pound bags of rice. You can get white rice, brown rice, whatever. So let's go back to Mr. Hagman's article. You have to excuse me if I sound out of breath. It's my persistent health problems that do that to me. Hold on one moment. Okay, let's go on. SHTF doesn't care if all your ammo at the range, if you used all your ammo at the gun range, and Walmart has been out for the past month. Yeah, there you go, right there. Everybody knows about that. SHTF doesn't care that the grocery store is closed because of a power outage, and you only have a can of peas and some saltine crackers in the house. Well, you could make green pea casserole out of that, don't you think? You might not have any choice if you didn't bother to prepare. SHTF doesn't care if you are wearing high heels and your car plummets to the bottom of a ravine. You still have to climb out. SHTF doesn't care that the pharmacies are closed because of a pandemic, and you have no OTC or herbal medicines at home. If you catch the virus, you'll suffer. SHTF doesn't care that your truck is almost out of gas and the local gas stations have closed because of the disaster. If you have to bug out, you might wind up walking. And this list goes on and on. There's 25 items on this list, and you can go and see it at activistpost.com. That's activistpost.com. Now, the communications that I've had in the recently have indicated to me that there is some new information. Some new information that you should go on YouTube and search the Kuiper Belt. Kuiper Belt investigations, and see where that gets you. That's about all I can say about that right now. Now, as everybody knows, we have pardon me for just a second. Here's another suggestion too that I got from somebody in the show chat. Antibiotics, when you need medications, antibiotics, that sort of thing. There is, without getting myself into a lot of trouble, there is more than one version of medications, and some of it is very easy to get. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Locally, in person, in the store, depending on what particular store you go to. Sometimes you just can't say what you want to say on the air. Now, as everybody knows, over the past week, we have a new pope. And of course, everybody is scurrying about like the Nephilim, trying to destroy him already. From He's Satan emails to lamestream media outlets going ape over his views of traditional church views, the attempt will be made to marginalize him. which of course will not work. Within an hour of the selection of the new pope, I began receiving emails about Jesuits are criminals, the new pope is a sexual predator, and the real story behind the pope, etc., etc. It seems to me that the effort to destroy the Catholic Church does nothing more than prove how close the teachings of Satan that some people are. How close to the teachings of Satan that some people are. It's bad enough that we have entire governments that are devoted to forwarding the word of evil, the teachings of Satan. Now we have people that masquerade as Christians doing the work of Satan. And truly, I say to you, the tribulation is upon us. Now, speaking of the tribulation, now that we're really getting into it full time, the mini-series, The Bible, has set records for viewers. This is an amazing series that large numbers of people are watching. The people behind it are Mark Burnett and his wife, Roma. She was the star of the Touched by an Angel television series. Some very interesting and very powerful events happened on the set of that show. And I can say for myself that there have been things that have happened to me while I am doing things, specifically while I have been doing this show, when we have had ministers and pastors on the show, very powerful Christians. Things have happened, and I believe that they actually do happen, and they do happen for a reason. Let's take a look at some of the quote-unquote weird things. This comes to us from, let me see here, InsideTV.ew.com. InsideTV.ew.com. Mark Burnett says that weird things happened on the Bible set. This first part of the article right here, this is by Grady Smith. This first part of the article here shows that there are 13.1 million viewers on the first night. And he worked, it's a 10-hour special. And Roma Downey, as I mentioned before, she is also in the series, as well as one of the producers, people behind it. Mark Burnett, you probably know from the other shows that he's done. And he says, and I quote, "The hand of God was on this. The edit came together perfectly, the actors came together perfectly, and it just came to life." But he wasn't speaking of how well the practicalities of the production had gone. Weird things happened during filming. If you watch the series, you can pick these up. So the series isn't over; they'll be repeating it. It'll probably be on Netflix and every other place, and you can probably see it. There's a scene with Jesus and Nicodemus. When Nicodemus comes to Jesus in the night, it's a very still night, not a breath of wind, and they're on the edge of the Sahara Desert in a palm grove in an oasis. Jesus says the Holy Spirit is like the wind. And at that moment, a wind like a 747 was taking off came blowing through the set and went 20 seconds and then stopped. And the actors didn't stop. They didn't stop the take. They just kept going. The missing frog. They had hundreds of craftsmen working on making costumes. And the most important costume was, of course, the costume that the character that plays Jesus wears. Every time at the end of the day, the costumes got to be taken away to be maintained. To stitch them up, to hem them, and things like that, because they get dirty and whatnot. So when we were doing the baptism scene, it's completely immersed in water. And during that, a portion of the costume came away. They shot this in a giant reservoir on the edge of the Sahara Desert. So we're never going to find this piece of fabric again. So it's really, really bad, because obviously you can't make a new one to exactly match the old one. Every time you lose something, you've got 5 months ahead, and you can't replicate these costumes. 4 days later, a kid shows up from many, many miles away who had been seeking us through the desert to return it to them. He didn't know why he should seek us, but felt he had to return that part of the costume. That actually happened to me once. I'll tell you about that story in a minute. Let me finish up with this article. Cobras at the Cross. They had a snake wrangler every day on the set. They've got a couple of hundred people involved in the shooting, and they can't afford to have people getting bitten by snakes, which obviously are all over the place in the oasis and in the desert. Every day, this guy would find a snake or maybe two snakes and remove them. On the day of the crucifixion, a lot of people prayed, obviously, because these are Christians filming a series about Jesus and the crucifixion, and obviously they would pray. The cross was a huge thing. They prayed for safety and thought, imagine if this cross fell, the actor playing Jesus could be killed or badly injured. The snake man came to work that day. He'd gotten there early on the mountain playing Golgotha, and the bag of snakes he was carrying was the biggest bag they had ever seen. And he found 48 cobras and vipers on that particular day alone on the set of that show. That I find to be some amazing, amazing stories from the people that did that miniseries. It is very interesting, and strange things throughout my life have also happened to me. There was one time when I lived in downtown Ypsilanti. Not downtown, in the city of Ypsilanti, in one of the outskirts of the town. And one day, right after we'd moved into this house, a dog comes walking up the driveway, just like, "Hi, I'm home." Well, this dog, she happened to be a young wolfhound. Very big dog, very powerful dog, a very cunning and beautiful breed of dog. Well, my wife at the time, she was at home sick. She had the flu. And the dog was less than a year old and very, very rambunctious. And she took the dog out for a walk. The dog saw a squirrel and took off on her. And she wound up having to let the leash go, and the dog went pew, off into the sunset. Oh, she calls me at work and says, "Your damn dog just ran away." So I am going home to try to find my dog. Because this dog, at that age, she was very rambunctious. I mean, if you had to have her on a leash, she'd be gone like a shot, and who knows if she'd come back. So I'm at work, and I need to get home as quickly as possible to try to find this dog, and of course I cannot find my car keys anywhere. I am looking and looking and looking. I must have spent 20 minutes looking for my keys at work, and I couldn't find them. Finally, I stopped, and I said a prayer. I really, really need these keys. And I worked at a printing company, and printing companies use pallets of boxes, real tall boxes and everything. And after I said that prayer, I put my hand on top of a skid of boxes to try to jump up to get a little bit higher so I can look down around the room to see if I could see my keys anywhere, and I happened to put my hand right on top of my keys, right there in that box. But that's not where the story ends. I race home. I'm going through Depot Town in Ypsilanti, and sitting there by the side of the road on the sidewalk is my dog. Somehow, somebody had managed to take the leash off the dog, make a slip knot around a street sign post, and put the leash back on the dog, and the dog was sitting there waiting for me. I have no idea who did that. I have no idea how that happened. That dog would have not let anybody else but my wife and I handle her like that. To this day, I don't know how that happened, but I have a very strong suspicion exactly how it happened, and now you do too. Now, let's get on to our next story. 6% of Americans believe in unicorns, 24% believe in dinosaurs and man hung out together, 18% believe the sun revolves around the earth, and nearly 30% believe cloud computing involves actual clouds. Honest to God, there is the article right there at the Huffington Post. Now, Iran is targeting VPNs again. Let me see. Here we go. This comes to us from Radio Free Europe. Iran targets means of bypassing online censorship. In a lot of countries around the world, people are being browbeaten, forced, not allowed to be on the internet like you and I are. The people in Iran would have a very difficult time watching this show. The same goes for people in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, China, other places. Well, one of the ways to get around that is to use a virtual private network. In other words, you connect to another computer that is allowed within the constraints of the government's permissions, and from there you can connect. You're basically using a remote desktop or a remote computer and connecting to the internet. Well, now Iran is cracking down on that. It has stepped up its already tough internet censorship policy by blocking the most popular anti-filtering tools used by Iranians to access blocked websites. Communication tools that allow phone calls like Skype and Viber and free text messaging like WhatsApp have reportedly also have been disrupted. Citizen journalists there that are reporting on some of the things that the government's doing, life on the ground there, have basically been shut off. They have been stopped and not allowed to communicate with the outside world. We don't know if something's going on, but the recent statement by President Obama that we have less than a year before they get an atomic weapon and the clock's ticking, and who knows what that nutbird's going to do next. So there may be something to that, but it's worth keeping an eye on. And our next article, the government says sugar is deadly poison. The sugar companies say no one is buying our sugar. The government says we'll buy it. Government, the cause and solution for all of life's problems. The article right here is at the Huffington Post business section. USDA weighs sugar bailout, and that will probably, you guessed it, boost candy prices. But remember, there's no inflation. USDA is considering buying 400,000 tons of sugar in an aim to limit supply and boost prices so the sugar producers can pay back the government loans that they're in danger of defaulting on. Honest, I hadn't read that article before I just put it on the screen. So let me guess here. Okay, here we go. You got that. Okay, the government loans the sugar companies a bunch of money, right? And then the government comes out with a report that says sugar's poison. So people stop using as much sugar, and now the sugar companies can't afford to pay back the government loans. And the government says, no problem, we'll buy the sugar so you can get more money so you can pay back the loans. And people wonder why the economy's going to crash. It's because of crap like this that the economy's going to crash. That is just absolutely outstanding. Oh my God. Henry Kissinger is not optimistic about the Mideast peace. Obama is going to Israel and will probably lecture everyone on how they have to use him to broker the final solution, which will not work because the guy is a clown. Thus, he will be petulant and pissed off, and when that happens, somebody is going to have to pay for that. My guess is Rand Paul, the easiest target right now. May God have mercy on all our souls. And let me see here. Right here is the article. This comes from Bloomberg. Kissinger sees little hope for Mideast peace and the Arab Spring. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger says that there is little chance of any breakthrough in the stalled Israeli-Palestinian peace talks as Barack Obama visits Israel next week. I am not optimistic about reviving peace talks, in large part because of the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamist parties in the region that aren't inclined to support a just outcome with Israel, Kissinger said in an interview airing this weekend on Bloomberg TV's Conversations with Judy Woodruff. And if an actual bona fide member of the Illuminati says it, you know it's true. Henry Kissinger. So let's see what other stories we have here. Yes, we have this story here. There we go. Trying to get all of the computers to work. Pardon me for 1 second. As always, after I get to a certain part of the show, my voice begins to get hoarse, which is about an hour. And, oddly enough, it's about an hour. Now, our first guest on the show, the first guest we ever had, was Clif High. Now, if you're not familiar with Clif High, he is basically the creator of what is called the WebBot Report. He is an outstanding linguist, and he is a good friend of mine and of the show, the very first guest we ever had on. He's been on a couple of times since then, and I would love to get him back on the show. However, because of my voice and everything, it is really hard to have a decent conversation for more than half an hour or so with somebody before my voice starts getting very, very hoarse. It takes a lot of concentration to be able to control the cadence and the volume of my voice, so my throat doesn't get real hoarse and I lose my voice. It also triggers one of my physical limitations right now, which is what is called syncope. And what happens is my blood pressure goes sky high and then it drops down to 0 and I pass out. So if I don't keep a real close eye on how I'm talking and how I'm saying words, then you might get to see me not be on the camera for a little while as I pass out. Wouldn't that be fun? That would be the most excellent. Okay, so anyways, Clif High is a good friend of ours. He was our first guest on SBI, and we are forever grateful for that. Now, Clif does what he calls Wujo commentaries. They're audio files, and they are really, really good. I would highly suggest, very strongly suggest, that you get over to his site, halfpasthuman.com, halfpasthuman.com, and look for the Clif's Wujo series of audio discourses. The ones that, the past three, March 5th, March 11th, and March 16th, are so excellent. They are so good. I've listened to each one of them multiple times, and he has a plethora of subjects that he talks about from his point of view, and they are extremely interesting. What they do, what Clif does, is over the past few years, he and others, and as it turns out, I should back up a little bit. As it turns out, what Clif does is he uses linguistics to detect patterns using the internet. And I can't be more technical than that because I don't want to give you an incorrect explanation of it. But he sends out these spiders, the same thing that search engines use. He sends out spiders, and they go around the internet and they find keywords, phrases, and they send them back, and he uses that for the WebBot reports. Lately, the reports that have come out are very spooky accurate. The accuracy has been building. Now, there are other groups, companies, groups, individuals that are doing the same thing that he is doing. It is a very small and exclusive community that does these things. And what he and the others that do the same thing, let me just read this and make more sense probably. Over the past few years, he and others that do the same thing, the others that are essentially duplicate the efforts that he is doing, they look at and gather data from the internet, or what we call the WebBot reports. Anyways, Clif has been seeing a drop in data that they are gathering from the spiders that are sent out on the internet. And he has now pinned down the time frame much more closely, because we are getting into the time frame right now where there is a drop-off of the immediacy language on the internet. We have already passed the first one. The first one has been pinned down by Clif, if I am quoting him correctly, to be the Arab Spring. When that happened and these countries began controlling the internet, that caused a great drop-off of information on the internet. And that was the first one. That one's already been documented. The second one, the biggie is, and this is going to sound totally insane, but let me read what Clif is saying. The biggie is going to happen in 60 days or so from right now. Ding. Today is March 17th. Within 60 days of right now, we can expect that what happens will be related to water. The description that Clif is describing is a lake in the air, as opposed to the typical so-called Pineapple Express, which is a river of moisture that causes rain for days and days. He's in the Pacific Northwest. The Pineapple Express comes over, and they have your typical Seattle weather. What he is seeing is the descent of a lake of moisture worldwide. Think the Great Flood level of event. And, get this, the term meteors has been cropping up in the data sets, and this is before the latest crop of meteors started hitting the Earth, all of the fireballs. So we have an enormous increase in the moisture in the atmosphere and an enormous increase in the number of meteors. This all may be related, and this is where my thinking comes in because of the subjects that we've talked about. This may be related to Dr. Paul Lavallette's galactic superwave theory or another cosmic event. Now, we covered that a few months ago. Paul Lavallette's interview with the Camelot people. And it would be a good idea, if you could dig that up somewhere, to listen to the interview. But if you go here, right here, and this is at Project Camelot, projectcamelot.org. This is the transcript of the interview with Dr. Lavalette. It's a good idea if you go over there and listen to the interview or read the transcript. This is what he said during the interview. Well, I found it's he created a foundation for studying these events, and he says he founded it with the purpose of further investigating the superwave phenomenon and the event that signs of a superwave were about about to be arriving, and this was back in 2009, that we would go into high gear alerting, like when you have the first warning signs of an earthquake, you start alerting everyone. We're dealing with a phenomenon that few people knew about, so I have felt obligated to try and do my best to inform people about this new concept. It's a Starburst Foundation, the Starburst Foundation that he founded. And he says, if you look at the past to understand the future, in this case you're dealing with a cyclic phenomenon. We have the ice core record from both Antarctica and Greenland, and people have measured beryllium-10, which is an indicator of cosmic ray density, on the surface of the Earth. So it sort of gives you a chart of how cosmic ray intensity has varied over the past few 100,000 years. And going back, you see peaks. This is the same subject that we talked about with Boris Artemenko and others on the show. The cycle that happens over and over again. And for those of you that are up on this, we are talking about Mu, we are talking about Atlantis, the Exodus, the Great Flood. All of them are within this cycle. Over and over again, this happens. It's in the ice core. And as luck would have it, we happen to be alive during the end of one of these cycles. This is the perfect storm of man-made and natural events that I opened up the show with. In fact, let's listen to a couple of audio clips from that particular interview. Hold on one second while I cue them up. And here we go.
You look at the past to understand the future. In this case, you're dealing with a cyclic phenomenon. And we have the ice core record from both Antarctica and Greenland. And people have measured beryllium-10, which is an indicator of cosmic ray intensity on the surface of the Earth. So it sort of gives you a chart of how cosmic ray intensity has varied over the last few 100,000 years. And going back, you see these peaks. I had predicted you would find peaks when I did my PhD dissertation on this topic at Portland State University. And later the data came out, and indeed there were peaks. And you can take this and analyze it to look for the periods. You find there's certain periods that sort of come out of this data. And one of them is around 26 to 28,000 years, which is approximating the precessional cycle of the Earth. And in fact, the two tend to match up in a certain way, which is very interesting. Another is around 11,500 years, and the third one, there's one around 5,700 years, which is close to the Mayan calendar cycle. And you see that there was a major event at the end of the Ice Age between 11,000 and 16,000 years ago, and that we're in fact overdue now for another one. There were smaller events. You see a small event around 5,300 years ago. It lasted maybe 20 years or so. And there's also very small events averaging every 500 years or so since then. There were 14 small puffs of gas that were emitted from the galactic center, which indicate it was active. But it wasn't active enough to create a peak that you could see in the...
And that's the first audio clip. And the second audio clip is where he describes exactly what this galactic wave is. And as I said, it appears that there are several events that are coalescing all at the same time that may make things rather painful for us humans here on the Earth. Let's listen to this last clip.
Superwave consists of cosmic ray electrons, gamma rays, X-rays, light, radio waves across the whole spectrum, along with a gravity wave. And this is all traveling at the speed of light towards our solar system. fact, it propagates throughout the whole galaxy, sort of like a spherical shell traveling out from the center of the galaxy.
So,
we've all heard of gamma ray bursts, and
yes.
in fact, some scientists have theorized that the gamma rays are accompanied by charged particles coming along with them, that it's actually charged particles that generate the gamma rays on the way. And this is what a superwave is, except on a much larger scale. Instead of a burst just of a fraction of a second, we're dealing with something that could continue for hundreds, even thousands of years.
So, a galactic superwave that we are overdue for could continue for hundreds or thousands of years. Or it could be one of those brief bursts that last for 10 or 20 years. Either way, according to him, we are overdue for one. And there is evidence that points toward something interacting with our solar system and the region of space that we are going through that is affecting the sun, our magnetic shield around the planet, as well as other aspects of extrasolar activity that I am not going to talk about at this point, so that we can gather some more information and get permissions from people to actually cover those as in-depth as we really should. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is about it for this week's show. We have been on the air for about an hour. I have been muttering into the microphone here for about an hour. And it appears that my voice is not leaving me as badly as it was in the past, which is a good thing. So that means that we can actually start thinking about having guests on the show once more. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to stick to this Sunday schedule, Sunday 3 p.m. Eastern, to do the shows. And then we'll, of course, put the shows up on YouTube, and the audio version and the show notes themselves will be available at ussamichigan.com. So, that is our show for this week. I would like to thank everybody for stopping by and watching the show, no matter which website you happen to be watching the stream on, because I know there are a number of websites that stream the show, as well as ours at sunskyMystery.com. So, thank you for showing up. Thank you for contributing to the show. We always appreciate our audience very, very much. And until next week, 3 p.m. Sunday Eastern, we will see you then. Have a good week.